Thank you all for coming tonight. This is another in a series of Paterson Museum Foundation webinars dealing with all sorts of history of Paterson and the Passaic County. Tonight's presentation is going to be a very interesting one by a local attorney by the name of Angelo Cifaldi. He's a president and managing director of Wilentz, Goldman, and Spitzer, leading all aspects of that firm's practice and operations. He's also the co-chair of the firm's mass tort and class action and cannabis law groups. Now, that says a lot right there, but what you need to know about Mr. Cifaldi is besides being a attorney, he's also a licensed pharmacist, so that's very interesting. He appreciates the large display of pharmacy objects and pharmacy collection in the museum. So he's studied that for quite a few years. So he loves it. But he's very much involved in not just sort of the things I just mentioned, but also environmental issues legally and things along those lines. So he's well prepared to talk to us about a lot of things, but also including the topic of our talk tonight, which is all about Otto Charles Benz, who's a local watercolor artist, born and raised in Paterson, 1882, and has an incredible array of watercolor paintings that he executed over many, many years, including some that are at the Paterson Library. So without further ado, let me invite our speaker tonight, Angelo, to start his presentation. So thank you for coming, Angelo.
Thank you, Glenn. Just one little correction on something you said. He
Yes.
does oil paintings, not watercolors. So I don't get confused when I start going through this.
Okay. I must have read, I thought I read somewhere it said watercolors, but I stand corrected. Oil.
Not a problem.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, welcome everybody. So tonight you're going to learn about Otto Charles Benz, who people in North Haledon take as our most famous artist. Probably he's our only artist, but he was quite famous, and as you're going to see, he's really famous in a lot of areas. So why don't we begin? Okay, I'm trying to begin. Here we go. So we're going to go over his family, his life, and his art, and you're going to see a lot of his paintings. Any paintings you see are in my collection unless I attribute them to someone else. So let's start about his roots and lineage. So it's amazing now online you could find a lot of interesting things. So I found the census from Manchester Township from 1900. And for those of you that are familiar with the area, before they split up Haledon, North Haledon, and Prospect Park, there was a town called Manchester Township that also included parts of Paterson. So his father, who we see here, lived with his family, and you could see Otto here, son. The whole family came from Germany. And in 1900, he lived in Manchester Township. Then we looked at the borough of Haledon census from 1910. And again, we see Otto, who's the son of Fred Benz, and we see him listed. And they lived on Belmont Ave in Haledon. And you can see he was a meter reader initially. And we're going to go over what he did. So now his father was Frederick Benz. He was born in Basel, Switzerland. Now you notice they wrote Germany on the census sheet. He immigrated to the U.S. in 1871. He lived initially in Paterson, then Manchester Township, and then Haledon. He became a U.S. citizen in 1880. And you're going to see a lot of roots to the Paterson silk industry. His dad was the superintendent of Frank and Dugan silk manufacturers in Paterson. He got married in 1875 to Louise Stamil, and he had 8 children, including Otto. His father died in 1918. His mother was born in Würzburg, Germany in 1850, became a U.S. citizen in 1880. They got married in 1875, and as I said, they had 8 children, including Otto. She died in 1921. Now, I was able to find some information, more on some, less on others, of his sisters and brothers. Louise was born in 1876. She was a silk mill weaver in Paterson and a dressmaker. Other brother, Frederick, born 1880. He was a loomer, a foreman in other silk mill jobs in Paterson. He eventually worked for National Woven Label Company in Clinton Street in Haledon, and we're going to see a lot of the family work there because they were executives in the company as it developed. Frederick had three patents: a narrow wear loom, glass bar bracket mechanism for looms, and lid off mechanisms for narrow wear looms. So he actually had patents on some of the items used in the silk mills. His brother Herman, we have a lot of information on him. Educated in Paterson, graduated business school in 1902, chief clerk and then agent of PSE&G, or public service at the time. And then miraculously he became president of National Woven Label Company. He was married in September 1906, three children. He lived in Passaic and Paterson. In Paterson, it was 624 East 27th Street, and they were decently well off. He had a house in Lake Hopatcong that they spent the summers in. He was a member of the Rotary and Passaic City Club and enjoyed fishing. Ella, another sister, born 1886. Emma, born 1888, a music teacher. And then Nathalia, born in 1890, she was a public school teacher. But what was interesting, she married Winifred Maynard of North Haledon, who then became the vice president of National Woven Label Company on Clinton Street. You see the links here. He had three children, but what was interesting, for those of you that are familiar with North Haledon, we have Memorial School, which I have my arrow on here, and they lived at that corner house here, if you ever go through North Haledon on Squaw Brook and High Mountain Road, and that's that old brownstone house that's still there, so that's where she lived. Paul, we know very little of that he was, other than he was born. And then Adelaide, again, we know very little of. So now what about, we kind of go over his family, his brothers, his sisters. Let's see about him. Well, we were fortunate enough to find the North Haledon census in 1930. And what we found then is Otto, as head of the household after he got married, lived at Gianti Place in 1930, and we'll learn more about that, and we'll actually see the house he lived in because it's still there. It actually probably looks the same as it did then. Then now we have another census, North Haledon in 1940. Otto still lived in North Haledon, where he lived till he died. You see his wife Marie and some of his children that we're going to go over. So now what about Otto? He was born, as I said, in 1882 on Mulberry Street in Paterson, and he died in 1962. He first lived in Paterson with his mother and father, then, as I said, Manchester Township, then in Haledon, Clinton Street, and then in North Haledon, 55 Gianti Place. And we're going to see the connection because he was going to be involved with Mr. Gianti on various professional associations, who Gianti Place was named after. He got married in May 1894 and his wife died in 1969. They had four children: Thelma, Nathalia, Carl, and Noreen. And Noreen and Thelma were both commercial artists. And Noreen had some children and stepchildren. And some of the items in my collection I got from Noreen's stepdaughter when she felt she wanted to sell them. So here's Otto Benz's house. And if you're familiar with North Haledon, you just go up on Gianti Place and you look to the left, and it's this yellow and white house. He lived there starting in July of 1928. He lived there till his death in 1962, and then Marie sold the house in 1967 to her daughter Noreen. We know about this because he had a draft registration card that he signed, and he put this information on where he lived. He also put the address where he worked, again, National Woven Label, and it's in Clinton Street in Haledon, as I said. Now, he was also very active, and you're going to see he was a man of many talents. And he was on the Passaic County Historical Society, and he was on the Prehistory and Geology Committee. And he was one of the members for a couple of years on that committee. He worked initially as a gas collector. Then he designed print and jacquard textiles at Gabriel Mill in Paterson, and then the National Woven Label Company. And as you saw, many members of his family were either president, vice president, or executives in the company. As I said, he was well versed in botany, horticulture, mineralogy, Indian archaeology, and astronomy, and a frequent lecturer on those topics. So while we don't really know what his educational background is, he was very learned or he picked these things up over time because he also gave lectures in North Haledon in his latter years on mineralogy and Indian archaeology. As I said, he was on the Passaic County Prehistory and Geology Committee from 1928 through 1932. Now, the Paterson Museum was kind enough to share with me, and I've added to this PowerPoint, some of the ribbons put together by National Woven Label Company in Haledon, which was his family's company. And we see the one here done for the NRA during Franklin Roosevelt's presidency, as you see the bottom, National Woven Label Company. And evidently in 1941, the employees presented this label to people from the National Woven Label Company to celebrate Flag Day on June 14, 1941. So it's interesting that the Paterson Museum has some of these that link him to Otto Benz. So now, the real reason we're here is to talk about his art. And he was frankly a very impressive artist. And over the years, many of his works have been auctioned off. You find them on eBay and private auctions. I try to hunt them down and grab them from people in North Haledon, many of which will never let them go. But over time, I had acquired a nice collection. And you're going to see, I'm going to show you the painting that got me started in collecting his work. And you'll see that in this presentation. So, as I said, he was actually famous. He was in Who's Who in American Art. And in the volume, if you look from 1959, he's listed as a designer. It talks about the awards he won, where he studied, and we're going to go over this more in depth. But he exhibited all over, including Paterson, and we'll talk about that more later. So, how did he learn to paint? Well, clearly he was talented and he had innate ability, but he went to the Art Student League in New York, which was established in 1875 and frankly was one of the country's important art schools during the late 1800s. Then he studied at the Chase School of Art that was established by Merritt Chase in 1896, which was renamed the New York School of Art. Based upon the listing and the name he gave in Who's Who, he must have been there in 1896 or 7 because it's listed as the New York City by William Merritt Chase. So it wasn't the New York School of Art yet in 1898. And we're going to see Merritt Chase, if you're an art fan of Impressionism, he was quite a great American Impressionist, and we'll see more. In addition to going to Merritt Chase's school, he studied under Harry Emmons and Carl Lenz, two famous local artists. Otto was a member of the Ridgewood Art Association and the Paterson Art Association, which was a vibrant art association at the time because Paterson was one of the leading areas in New Jersey. Now, here are some examples of William Merritt Chase's art. And we're going to talk a little bit more about Impressionism, just to give you an idea what you're going to be seeing. So here are three of some of Merritt Chase's more famous works. So where did Otto exhibit? He exhibited in Newark in 1948, then Montclair, then Glen Rock. He was given a one-man show in Paterson in 1950, 51, 52, and 58. He exhibited in Pompton, New Jersey, Milburn, New Jersey, a one-man show. And for those of you that are familiar with art, when you get a one-man show, you've established yourself because everything in the show is just you. You're not sharing the spotlight with other artists. And as you see, as we advanced, he was always getting one-man shows. Ringwood, New Jersey, Haledon, New Jersey, and then North Haledon Memorial School. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. And these are only the ones that I could find. I'm quite sure there's a lot more because I looked through various online sources for newspapers and reports, and you could just find so much. He was given prizes in Paterson for his work in 1950, 53, and 55. Some of the art shows, for example, he received gold medals, which was obviously the best Impressionist work at the time that was presented at the show. Gold medal in Paterson in 46 and in Ridgewood in 55. What did he like to paint? He liked painting scenes, and this is from a quote from him, scenes of historical value of which he portrayed in all seasons, and we're going to see this. He did the impressionist style, and you're going to see how that evolved. And we have the famous quote that we're very fond of in North Haledon. He said, I could spend a lifetime putting North Haledon on canvas with its variety of subjects and changing aspects. And you're going to see some of that through the representative paintings I have in this presentation. So, just a brief thumbnail. What is Impressionism? You probably know if you like art, but it was really a 19th century art movement that started in Paris. And what it does is it recreates the sensation of the eye that views the subject rather than recreating the subject. So it's not a lifelike, accurate representation. There's visible, thick, raised brush strokes applied in mosaic-like patches and lights and colors. And you're going to be able to see that in some of the paintings he does. And there's emphasis on light and shadow. And they like ordinary subject matter, nature, out of doors, unusual visual angles, and open compositions. Generally, there's high horizon lines that often create a plunging perspective. Now, I'm certainly not going to criticize Otto, but you're going to see, like many Impressionists, his weakest thing was painting human subjects. And you're going to see that he takes some liberties with those, and we'll tell some jokes as we go along on some of those. And most times his perspective was pretty good, but at times the perspective is just a little off kilter. But what we're going to see when we look at his work is how he evolved, because he started out almost as a lifelike painter, and then he evolved. So let's look at his earliest known work, and I really like this one, and this is in my collection. And you're going to see sometimes I'm going to know where the painting was from because he was very nice. Many times he wrote on the stretcher bar where it was or the address. Many times, unfortunately, if these were taken off the original stretcher bar and put on a new one, that was lost to time. But sometimes we could identify where they were. So this is the earliest known work I've ever seen of him, and it's done in 1910. And you could see here, he always dated his paintings many times. And it's O. Benz. Now, note the early signature here. It's O. Benz with a little flourish here, and then he wrote 1910. But what you're also going to notice, this is almost his attempt to do lifelike portrayals. And you're going to see, although this has tinges of Impressionism, it looked like he was trying to really be accurate in what he painted. And this was done in 1910. And what's interesting, you're going to see there's really no paintings after this. So what probably happened is this one survived somehow. But then over time, when he's growing with his family, working at National Woven Label, he probably didn't have time doing what he did. So all of a sudden, we're going to see him pick up in the 30s and 40s. Now, this is another one he did in 1911. Now, again, I'm sorry, note the signature. I didn't enlarge it, but you could see it's very similar to the 1910 signature I showed you. And he's starting to evolve a little more. And now we have 1930. There's that gap of almost 20 years when he starts now being more prolific and more active. Now note the signature change here. And we're going to start see on the bottom, Otto Benz. Now he spells out his name. He still puts the full date in, but it's all capital letters. And we're going to see that's the signature he used for the rest of his career. And again, this is an unknown location. Now, this is a real interesting painting, and this is in the Jeff Fisher collection. He hasn't sold it to me yet. Just joking if he's on here. This is Squaw Lake in North Haledon. And for those of you that are familiar with North Haledon, this is Squaw Brook Road coming down. And there used to be a lake here. And if you're a baseball fan and you've ever gone to Field 1 in North Haledon and watched the Reds or any of the adult teams, this lake is where that field is now. So where I'm showing you the arrow, this is the first base line. So there was a lake there at one point. And what you could see here is in a map. I got an old map of North Haledon. And you could see here's Squaw Lake. And here's Cedar Terrace. And here's Rothsay. So Cedar Terrace is where the old Rathskeller used to be. And over here is where the ice cream store is. So if you run that down, this is the actual first baseline of Field 1. So this is where Squaw Lake was. And this is a really Otto was very good doing fall scenes. And what's interesting here is I told you his one daughter was an artist. Now, we're going to show you her rendition of the same subject. And we have the beautiful fall colors, but more importantly, we have one of his favorite subjects, High Mountain, which is in North Haledon, a prominent mountain, like one of the highest mountains on the whole East Coast. Supposedly, Henry Hudson, when he sailed up the Hudson River, this is the first mountain we saw. Now, how do we know that's true? I have no idea, but that's the legend we have. Now, here's that same scene done by his daughter Noreen. That's in the North Haledon Library collection. And you could see she made High Mountain look like the Alps. So Otto was quite realistic, and it's a kind of a rolling, gradual slope. Noreen added to make it look like it had this high peak and everything. And I don't know if she thought it was snowing or what, but you can still see the bridge. And it kind of looks the same. So you see the bridge, and it's similar, but that's his daughter's take on that scene, which is quite interesting. And again, it's the same picture. Now, you're going to see a lot of red barns, and the people in North Haledon like to say that Otto loved red barns, and you're going to see he painted red barns everywhere. We don't know where this is, but as you could see again, same signature Otto Benz, 1945, a nice winter scene, and you could see he's really perfected his impressionist style. There's the signature again, and as I say, you're going to see that over and over again. This is in my collection. I really love this painting. It's a very large painting. Um, we believe it's somewhere in Ringwood because I've given this presentation a couple of times, and some people believe it's in Ringwood. The title of the painting on the back is the Van Riper House. And if obviously a lot of you weren't here, probably alive during World War II, but if you had someone serving in the army, you got a gold star that you hung in your window. And evidently, this family had someone serving in the armed forces, and they had a gold star in the window. And you could see the house is a bit dilapidated, but I think he captured a stark winter scene. He started using, and you're going to see he likes to use purple in his winter scenes with blue. But this is really a very well done painting. This is another really nice painting he did. That's Squaw Brook on High Mountain Road. So you saw Squaw Brook where it crossed and went over. This is the Squaw Brook that crosses High Mountain Road, and then this is emptying into Molly Ann's Brook. This used to be called Squaw Brook. We had to change the name of it because I don't know what happened, but now it's called First Brook. But we still call it Squaw Brook in North Haledon. He also liked shore pictures, and I found out later that there were some people in North Haledon that traveled with him down the shore or to other shore locations, and that's why he painted. This was Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey. He went to the Berkshires with one family. This is really a nice portrait he did of there, 1947. Unknown location, but a nice pond scene. Could very well be North Haledon. Maybe this is High Mountain here, but there was no indication on the back. This is really a great one, and I got this from Noreen's stepdaughter when she decided to sell it. And I think this is probably one of the side streets off of Belmont Ave in Haledon. But what's really interesting about it, it's very colorful. It's painted from the backyard of somebody's home that really had a wonderful garden. It was painted in 1948. And here you can see the the people that it's not terrible, but that's not his strongest point. But the colors are very vibrant. It's a nice garden scene, and it's kind of atypical of some of the paintings did, but it's really well done. Someday I'm going to wander around Haledon and maybe find out where this potentially is. The problem is some of these houses could be missing now. This is a real great one that I recently obtained from an online auction. It's called Sayers Mill Dye Shop. It's located at 250 Belmont Ave in Haledon, and it was painted in 1948. So what I'm going to draw your attention to is I used a Google map here, and if you're familiar with Haledon, I have the red mark where this is. So this is Molly Ann's Brook, and you could see Molly Ann's Brook here. And for those of you that know, this is where that new marijuana dispensary is. and then the lock store is over here. So this is on the right side of um, Molly Ann's Brook. And we were unsure what was going on here, but what it appears is this was a dye mill. And it's very possible that after they treated whatever they were doing, they would use this water to wash out whatever they dyed. And you could see the water exiting here. So this might have been some area to wash out whatever they did. They might have also done tanning of hides. Now, there were no environmental regulations those days, so it all just dumped into the brook. But you could almost see here, you see this little mountain? If you stand there now, you could see this is kind of the hill next to Manchester High School. Water tower here. Everybody had clotheslines back in the day. And again, this is another winter scene. He really did a nice job. He did a beautiful job portraying the water here. But this is another one from Haledon. This one's from a shipyard in York, Maine. And that was written on the back. I would have never figured that out in a million years. 1950. So now we're progressing forward. This is one he did of High Mountain in 1951. Now it says High Mountain on the back, and I was actually speaking to our mayor yesterday because he wants to incorporate something. But to me, this mountain is far too big to be High Mountain. And then this other mountain here, there is no mountain next to High Mountain that's this big. So I'm thinking that this may not be North Haledon. It could very well be Ringwood or something, because this just doesn't look like any area in North Haledon. But the person that donated it to the town said it was from High Mountain. So, I mean, I have no reason to doubt that. But he was pretty accurate when he did High Mountain. This just doesn't look like High Mountain to me. He did one in Lavallette, New Jersey, one of his seashore scenes. Really did a nice job on that. And you could see he loved using purple in his landscapes. And again, we have the figures. Not terrible, not great. This is a great picture in my collection. This is called the Lots Homestead. It's on High Mountain Road, and the house is still there. So if you're coming from Haledon, you pass you pass the Oldham Pond, and you look to your left. This house is still here. So off to the left, right now, instead of this pond, you have this little walled-in brook that goes through here. But as you can see, I've circled here. You see this blue house? This is the exact same house. It's got the porch here. It's got the windows here, and then the windows here and on the roof. So it's basically unchanged from 1954 when Otto painted. And even here, you see this other little house here on the side. Amazingly, that's still here in the painting. And here we see clearly High Mountain is here, and then Mount Cicino, which is the mountain next to it. So this is clearly in, although there's more trees here in the fall, if you stand at this exact location, the mountain looks exactly like he does it here. So this is a real great painting of a house that's still in North Haledon. Look at this, a surprise, a red barn. We don't know where this is, 1956. This is a little atypical. We don't know where it is, on 1956. Another red barn, 1957. Surprise, another red barn in 1959. I don't know if people commissioned they wanted red barns, but he did them. This is a great photo. This is the Borough of North Haledon collection. If you're familiar with North Haledon, this is Bueller's Cultural Center. I did a great job with the smoke. And this is owned by the Borough of North Haledon in a conservancy. But here you can see High Mountain in a winter scene. And this is hanging in the North Haledon Borough Hall. If you're interested, it is still there. It's a great photo. He really did a wonderful job on this. Now, this is my favorite photo by him, and this is how I got started collecting him. For years, this was hanging in High Mountain School, certainly in the 60s and 70s when I was there, but thereafter, and the entrance to the library, it was on the left-hand side. And I always remember when I'd go into the library, I'd say, boy, this is a great painting. And I didn't know who Otto Benz was. I had no idea. But this is from the top of High Mountain, looking east. So you can see here on the top, and I'm kind of circling with my pointer, that's Lambert's Castle. And then we could see the skyline of Manhattan. It's a beautiful fall scene, and that's hanging in the Borough of North Haledon collection. It was really in bad shape because unfortunately, when they took it down at High Mountain School, they stored it in a storage closet, and the painting really degraded. So the town had to have it restored before they put it up. And frankly, it's still good, but it's not as beautiful as it was as I remember it during the time I saw it, because obviously they had to do overpainting and some extensive restoration. But that's a real great painting. This is in the when Heather came to the presentation in North Hale, and she says, we have some of his paintings from Paterson. So she was nice enough to forward them to me, and I put them in the presentation. This is really one of my favorite works once I saw this. This is along Westbrook Road in Ringwood. But look at the beautiful job he did on the water on the brook, and how he has it coming over whatever that little dam is. I mean, this is really a stunning fall scene. We see the same signature done in 1960. I mean, he really perfected his art at this time. Now, there are some paintings that he didn't date. So I just have circa 40s and 50s based upon the style. A red barn, another red barn. That's a real bad picture of the human being fishing, but it's still a nice one. For a change, a red barn with chickens this time in the winter. A nice fall painting, a little different than usual. This looks like the Alps. It's clearly not the Alps, so I think he used a little artistic license because I'm not sure we have mountains like this in North Haledon and in northern New Jersey, but it's very possible he did paint a lot in Ringwood, and maybe there is a location where that is. This is another unknown location. Another one, nice painting. A little different. This is not a red barn, it's a brown barn. Another location. I don't think this painting was finished. It was interesting when it was offered to me. I got it at a very reasonable price, but it almost looked like he didn't finish, but he did sign it, which is a little peculiar. So it just doesn't look like it's done. This looks like a farm somewhere. Another nice painting of a pond with the drainage output. Another nice one. This is Darrow's Farm in North Haledon. Um, Obviously, it's no longer there. If you're familiar with North Haledon, you pass Memorial School. On your left, you make a left on Darrow Drive. And this Darrow's Farm, coincidentally, was on Darrow Drive. This is Squaw Brook with High Mountain in the background. You can see there's High Mountain, there's Mount Cicino, and then there's the little smaller mountain afterwards. This one's very atypical. I don't know where this was, but I guess he saw these tents somewhere and he wanted to paint them. Now, this is very interesting. I got this painting maybe a year ago at an auction, and it's called User's Farm on Roosevelt Ave. And you're going to see it's still there, and you're going to see two paintings I own of it. But what was very interesting when I got this painting, it came with a note attached to the back. And the note was signed by Lydia Cinquino. And she said, "This is me," because we lived across the street from Otto at the time, and he painted me in the doorway. She goes, "The problem is he made me look like an old lady, and I was only 12 years old." So this is Lydia Cinquino at age 12, and she looks like she's in her 70s, but she assured me that that is her. I mean, and obviously she's since passed, but this is a handwritten note from her, so it was interesting. And the painting did say User's Farm, so she was clearly correct. So I have no reason to doubt that she was 12 years old when she modeled for him. And you're going to see, and this is at a different angle. This is kind of looking north to south. This is looking south to north. So you're going to see another better picture of this where you can see what this is, because I have two pictures in my collection. Now here's the one looking to High Mountain. And there you see High Mountain. And this is still here. So you see this stone building with two windows and a door. Surprise! Here's the stone building with two windows and a door. There was another building here that's been knocked down, but then you have this, which is this area here that was probably converted a bit. But what's also interesting, you notice the way he painted these flowers. You kind of juxtapose that with the flowers he painted on that painting in Haledon, New Jersey, and you could see he used the same style. But what's great again is this is something still in existence in North Haledon that he painted. There was no date on this, but it had to be the 40s or 50s, and it's still here in 2026. And you can go up, and this is on Gianti Place, right across the street from where he lived. I'm sorry, on Roosevelt Ave, which is one street over. And somebody did do a watercolor of the same building. This is somebody that the library has. I don't remember who the artist was, but you can see this building here, the building here that's been removed, and then you could see this building here. This must have been more recent, this watercolor, because it matches the building here. So it's interesting to have this perspective. Another unknown location. This was done in York, Maine, and what I found out is he vacationed with his family and another family in North Haledon, and they used to go to York, Maine. And this was no date on this. But interestingly, he didn't always do this, but on this one, if you see in the bottom, he said York, Maine. So he wrote where he painted on the painting where he painted it. Unknown location. This one almost looks like unfinished. Very interesting photo somewhere. A little atypical of him. This, I got to say, is one of my favorite ones since Heather forwarded it to me to include in this presentation. From those of you who are maybe my age or a little older, there used to be these natural gas tanks on the Passaic River on both sides in the Bunker Hill section of Paterson. You all know where that is. So you kind of go over the bridge on Broadway, you continue down, go over those two bridges, and you enter Bunker Hill. And if you're not familiar or you're young, what used to happen is they'd fill these up with natural gas, and the thing would be up to the top. And throughout the time, they'd get lower and lower and lower as the gas went down, and they'd fill them up again. But this was a rare industrial scene he painted, but it's really vivid coloring, beautiful sky and water. He signed his name, and it was the 1940s or 50s. It's probably dated here, but what Heather sent me, I couldn't tell. Maybe someday Heather could check, and it might be cut off by the frame, but I'd love to know the date of this. But this is really a beautiful painting that I added to the presentation. This is another painting in the city of Paterson's collection. It was not identified where it was. So now let's just do a little bit about some newspaper articles we found before we wrap up. And for those of you that are my age or a little older, you remember the morning call. Back in the day, we used to get a morning paper and an evening paper because there was no internet, and this is the only way you got your news. And what's nice about now, everything's digitalized, so you can go back and find it. And I was able to find really one of the only photos I could find of Otto Benz. And this was in the Morning Call, Paterson, New Jersey, September 24, 1960. And it talks about he's going to exhibit his works at Memorial School. Now that's interesting. You remember that one painting I showed you of High Mountain in the fall was hanging in High Mountain School. So I have every reason to believe that that's the painting he donated to the school. And then he also evidently made a donation to Manchester High School. But what's interesting here, it talks about he was a textile designer, the info I had. But it says Herman Gianti, whose name was affixed to Gianti Place where Otto lived, was president of the regional school district. So he obviously set this up and got the gifts. Then evidently they were going to honor him because now he died in 62, so he probably was not doing as well. So they wanted to honor him. And in the Morning Call, November 11, 1960, they announced there was going to be a dinner to honor him in November 1960 at 7 p.m. at Leneve's Cedar Cliff Restaurant on 276 Belmont Ave. Now, we all know Leneve's is still there. It's a catering hall, but it's still on 276 Belmont Ave. Now, what's interesting is, and again, I thank Heather for this information because I didn't have this article. The guest speaker was Gaetano Federici, who was a famous Paterson sculptor, and we're going to talk about him in a minute, but evidently as a a local artist. Otto was friends with him, and he was involved in setting up this dinner and served as a guest speaker. And what we have here is some of the work, and as I say here, from 1880 to 1964, he was a Paterson artist who depicted with historic realism many leading athletic, civic, and religious leaders of the city between 1904 and 1957. And many of his works, whether larger than life statues, lunettes, pediments, or plaques, or bronze or cast stone, studio pieces in plaster or clay, can be seen throughout the city. And Heather gave me this photo. This is him working in his study, showing some of the work he's working on. You see that sculptors always seem to wear hats like that. But what I found interesting, because I'm also a collector of Mark Twain first editions, he obviously did a relief of Mark Twain here. I'd love to know where that is, because that's really well done. And here's a picture of him, and then here's another picture of him. And then there was an article in the Morning Call in the Paterson Evening Ruse, he got it in both, about the details of the dinner. And we see a photo of Otto, who I have circled here, and his wife. And then here is the sculptor we mentioned, Federici, off to the right here. And this talks about what was done, who spoke, and one of Benz's latest work was commissioned for Manchester Regional High School, and we talked about that. To end, we have his gravestone. Don't get nervous. I didn't go to the grave to find it. You could go online and they have pictures of gravestones. So I was actually able to find that he's buried in Laurel Grove Memorial Park in Totowa, New Jersey. And as I said, he died in February 8th, 1962. So I'd like to thank you for joining this. Hopefully you've enjoyed his art and my description of how he grew up, how he evolved, and if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Well, thank you very much. That's a wonderful presentation, Angelo. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I should have remembered these aren't watercolors; these are oil paintings. I'm the grandson of a art school teacher from Paterson, so school 6, school 20. So art teacher for Leonard Sachs of all people. So
Ah,
so anyway, I should have recognized that early on. So I apologize for that indiscretion.
not a problem.
So we're looking for folks to ask questions and stuff. We'll either use the chat or use the Q&A. So while we're waiting for perhaps a few to come in.
I
Um,
actually had something cool that I wanted to share,
oh,
if I
okay.
could.
She's got
So,
coolness.
so I meant to tell you this when I saw your presentation in North Haledon the first time, but when you're talking about the Passaic County Historical Society committee that he belonged to, one of the gentlemen on the committee with him was Russell Evans, who was a very prolific local amateur archaeologist in the area. And his collection actually ended up at the Passaic County Historical Society in their collection. And one of the other people on the committee was Mr. Morton, James Morton, and he was a longtime curator of the Paterson Museum and a very, very well-known and very popular geologist. So,
That's interesting.
yeah, so it's kind of neat. There were a couple other names looked vaguely familiar, but those two popped out to me that, they were very I didn't know that Morton was involved with the Historical Society as well as the Paterson Museum, but it kind of makes sense
Interesting.
that he was. It looks like we have a couple questions now, Glenn.
Yeah, we got a comment from Charlie to Angelo. It was an excellent presentation. He wanted to let you know that.
Thank you.
Let's see. We got a great presentation from Karen Patterson. I really enjoyed it. Thank you also from her.
Thank you.
There we go. There we go. Art is
I
popular.
had a question, another question. How many pieces of Otto Benz work does the town of North Haledon own?
Good question. The borough has on display about 8 of them, 8 or 9. And then there's individuals in town that own them, and I own about 25 or 30. And it's funny. Years ago, it was a lot easier to find them. What I'm thinking of doing is maybe putting together a website, because then when people are looking them up, they'll find that I'll say I'll be willing to buy the works, and then they email you. So sometimes I could probably put together a website, put on the paintings, put on this presentation, and then because what's very sad is I tried tracking things down, and there was one individual that lives in Wayne. I won't say where he lives, but he said he had about 10 of them. from his parents, but they got destroyed in a basement on a flood. And when
Uh,
I was talking to the stepdaughter of Noreen, she said there were a bunch of paintings that were stored by a relative in England and they got destroyed. So it's a shame, but whenever anything comes up, I try to buy it.
yeah, and there's no known catalog of his work.
No.
Federici was very almost overly meticulous with his sort of catalog. He had like a little index card box of every piece and how many like what date he had done and I think he recorded how many sort of practice pieces and versions that he had done ahead of time. So it was I think relatively easy to kind of track his work, but I know a lot of artists aren't necessarily, they're so focused on creating, they're not necessarily focused on archiving their existing
Yeah,
portfolio.
and if he did, we have no record of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, excellent. Last call for questions or comments. Here's another one just came in a Q&A. Um, After that 20-year period when he did little painting, did he step back from business or concentrate on his art from then on?
Yeah, that's a good question. What I think happened was he stepped back from business, and that's when he really became prolific because you're seeing a lot of things in the late 40s and 50s. So I think after he made a living for his family, he probably that's when he started painting more when he had a lot more free time. And we're fortunate that he did that.
Yeah, we are. And as we all know, the Paterson silk industry provide a lot of art lovers and art generators over 100 years, right? We've got so many people, the artists that we can point to that had a connection to the silk industry, and obviously in the case of the Benzes here, the woven ribbon company and the dye houses and things like that. So excellent. So I guess that's it. I don't see any more questions or comments. And again, I want to thank you, Angelo, for coming on tonight to give a wonderful presentation. Thank you to all our attendees tonight for coming along with us. As we mentioned earlier, this episode of our webinar series will, in fact, go up on the Paterson Museum's YouTube page in a few days. And so anyone who wants to watch it again or send it to a friend or what have you, it will live on forever there, like everything else does on YouTube. So, anyway, without any other further comments, I want to thank you all again for coming tonight, and we'll see you at the next one. We've got a few more planned. Maybe the 1926 wool strike in Passaic City we might be having coming up here soon. So, thank you all for coming again.
Thank you,
Thank
Glenn. Thank
you.
you, Heather.
Yes, thank you, Angela. It was great. Good night,
Bye-bye.
everyone.